This is invention time. Alright, Big Goldie's world is using, instead of aquarium gravel as a substrate, I'm using a softened glass, and the lights from under the tank shine up through. And it has a knock-on effect. A great deal of photosynthesis happens under the glass, and so it helps purify the water, and it gives a lot of like algae for the goldfish to munch on, but those bubbles escaping are oxygen bubbles. So I built a rock tumbler that will turn. So I built a machine that will turn our bottle trash into substrate for the aquarium, and it's a rock tumbler, which I'll show you forthwith. But it's worth mentioning a standard rock tumbling, like when you buy agates in the gift shop or the museum. The tumbling starts with something like this, Lake Superior agate, and through tumbling you get something super shiny. And you start with a heavy grit to get your shaping, and then you go finer and finer grit until you're using grit that's smaller than a wave of light, and that gives you this super high polish. But it's really, you have to be very clean between tumblings and not allow any of the previous grit. And then as you get to the finer grit, you're supposed to tumble things in plastic beads with like a little soap. So basically you're creating these conditions that are like very different than nature. And what I was trying to do was mimic nature. And so when I say mimic nature, it's because a number of years ago I decided I wanted to create like a artificial sea glass, and because I was using like found glass in my art, so I found the parts in my Mark I tumbler. I'm not reassembling it, but bear with me. So you got a bucket. This has a bearing. It rolls. This hinged, and then a belt which runs from the bucket to there. So that was the first one, and I tumbled those for a couple years. And to the point about mimicking nature, I feel like I have So the first concern was noise, and right off the rack, this cement mixer is like a steel bell, and even the noise from the drive, just so a lot of what I did to like dampen the sound of it. So I have coated the drivetrain here with leather, little leather bits, and you can really hear where the places where they've come off, and this is twofold: to dampen it, but also to like ultimately create like a consumable part, so that the like foundational elements are not consumed. Yeah, so basically I've coated the outside with like epoxy and layers of fabric and glue and sawdust and stuff. And the motor housing. So it helps a bit. Now, inside I've coated the tumbler with a variety of items. Basically, like sand and epoxy and shells to wear down, to resist the wearing down from the glass and grit. I was planning to take this guy offline, do some repairs, but I'm just going to patch it up for the purposes of this video. There's two little pinhole leaks in the bottom, which I didn't notice, except that they became a mud volcano. So I'll have to patch those. And really the mud is the worst part, because it's like kind of abrasive and slimy and ooblecky, and it's like chunky. The tumbler mud is not chemically toxic, but it's just awful. It's not mud. It's not clay, minerals. It's ground glass, and it's yucky mud. But really it settles out hard, and like once it settles in the water, it won't pour back out. And it settles into this fine, like sedimentary rock, but you have to wait for it to shrink and crack to get it out of the container. And it's so fine that it's soaked into the polyurethane cover for the tumbler, and basically the thing weighs 20 pounds now and is covered in stone. And if I were to soak this cover down and try to like squeeze out the mud from the pores of the urethane, it's too late. The pores will be destroyed by having that mud in them. By like trying to squeeze them out, it like cuts up the pores and it's not spongy anymore. And just having the dry mud on this makes this like an OSHA hazard, because it's like dust, and I try to avoid that. So yeah, there's no way around the mud. It's like you tumble square things into round, and you're gonna end up with all these teeny corners in the bottom. So I'm gonna quick patch up those holes and make a new cover, and then let's make some aquarium glass. We're shooting a video here. So we got those leak holes plugged up. We got a new cover rigged. Let's make some aquarium glass. let that sort itself out. I don't have a lot tumbling in there right now. It's going to break down a lot. But I don't want to. But I have just clear glass in there, and I don't want to retumble other stuff I have or put in the green glass because then I'll have to pick it out. But it's not going to be a very big batch, and you know, I kind of hoard glass around here because the city doesn't pick it up, and I use it in my project sometimes. And so I'm looking around on the lot for more clear glass to have a decently solid batch. Should have known that was tempered. I knew it was tempered glass when the hammer bounced off it. I knew. But you want to believe. I wanted to believe it would give me the big nuggety pieces. But, you know, this tempered glass will tumble into aquarium too. And I really wanted to be rid of the piece of glass. Alright, so I may throw a handful of sand in that later, but basically stones are harder than glass, and I'll let that go overnight. Stay tuned, and tomorrow I'll show you how we process the material out of the tumbler, and that'll be even more fun.